Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the North East Non-League Show. Looking back with, and tonight we're joined by Colin Myers. Colin, thank you very much for coming on tonight.
No problem. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. And I was always sponsored by Baywatch TV, Sunderland West End, Durham City, Jade Bell, and of course, proud to support If You Care Share Foundation. So lots to go up tonight, Colin. Obviously, the early days into your management coaching as well. Really looking forward to this one. I know he coaches a new college, so we're going to have a little bit of chat about that as well, which we're really looking forward to. Lots of memories on that one. But just getting on to yourself as well. And before we go to the management side, or always with the managers that come on, I like to talk about the playing side as well. I mean, before we chat about it, tell us a bit more about your playing days, how you played for, and the kind of things that you won as well.
Yeah, playing, I mean, majority was Northern League that I played. I'd class myself as a journeyman footballer. I could play a little bit, but I think my key strength was that I could stop them that could play. By whatever means. Sort of fell into that. I started out at Brandon. Obviously, I'm a Brandon lad, so as a kid growing up in the village, all you wanted to do was play for the big team, as they used to call them. And I got that opportunity quite early under Ray Gowan, who was a cracking fella, absolutely cracking fella, mad as a box of frogs, but, good lad. So my early days at Brandon I was in all of those players, if I'm honest. Mm-hmm. I didn't really make that much of an impact on my first spell at Brandon. But there was players, Steppy Dixon, Bruno, Paul Dalton was there, went off to Man United. They were real good players. Joe Calvert. Brandon always had a good side in those days. They were always top half of the First Division Northern League. They were always very competitive. So that for me was really where it all started, which was great for me being a local lad, because there weren't many local lads in the team at the time. Paul Stout was there, who very good mate of mine, fantastic player. Darren Hardman was there. Again, I mean, I used to like to kick. Darren was next level up, I think. Darren loved putting people in row Z, and he prided himself on it as well. But he could play a bit as well. You had to win the Northern League in those days. Mm-hmm. Some fantastic teams around, some fantastic players. I mean, Billingham Synthonia were the team at the time, towards the late 80s. What a fantastic side they had. They were just so hard to play against. They had great players. They were very physical. They were a great side. They were probably one of the best sides I've seen in all my time through the Northern League. The good team they had at Bedlington in the 90s with Dean Gibb and all those guys, that would have been a hell of a game watching them two play against each other. But I think for me, Sinners just shaded it. They were just brilliant. I mean, they would give conference teams a run for the money. Yeah. They would regularly, Northern League sides would get to the first round, 2 or 3 of them every year of the FA Cup. The Vars wasn't an option then, because the Northern League sides played in the trophy. So you ended up playing your conference teams and from further up the pyramid, and they used to get to the latter rounds of that competition as well, which was a real tough competition, the trophy. But the Northern League, it was a top league around this area by a million miles. The Northern Premier League did exist, but there weren't many teams. At that time there was probably only Gateshead who used to play in it. So the majority of lads in this area would play Northern League football, and it was a real tough league, really was. But that's probably where I started. I then ended up at Counting 3 Tons in the Wayside League. A good mate of mine, Morris Flint, who I'd played a bit of junior football with. He was from Overlea home, and I ended up going to Counting 3 Tons, which again I think that's where I sort of started realising I was good enough to play at that level. Mm-hmm. Because it was Wayside League, but again, the Wayside League was a very tough league in those days, and a lot of those players could have played Northern League, and for some reason they didn't. But it was a tough league with some good sides. So that's where I think I started to get the confidence to think, well, I can play, and I can compete at this level. What knocked us back a little bit in the early days was I got glandular fever, and I didn't know I had glandular fever. I started losing a lot of weight, and I just had no energy at all. And it took a while to find out that I had glandular fever, and it probably got the best of us for about a year, until I could really start playing football again. So I'd dabbled a couple of times. I'd gone to Stanley United for a small period of time, just to try and get myself back, because I literally couldn't play for months and months. So at Stanley United, I started to play again, and things were going okay, and I started playing really well. And then I got a phone call from Peter Feenan, who was at Durham at the time in the Old Ferns Park ground. So I went down there. It was February of the end of one season, and I went down there, and they had a cracking side down there. Derek Ord, Jerry Hogan, players like that. And I got straight in the side, and I was playing well, and I enjoyed it. And I thought, right, okay, then, yeah, we can do this now. But at the end of that season, I got a phone call from Peter, just to tell us he'd been sacked. and it just, I don't think anybody knew what was going on. Certainly a couple of lads I spoke to, they had no idea it was coming or whatever. Whether Peter had a falling out with a board or whatever, I never ever found out. But that was like, all right, okay then. So anyway, went to pre-season. Durham contacted me, went down to pre-season training. And I think there was me and a fella called Joe Roddy, who was left from the season before.
Nice.
Most of the other guys, I didn't know they were, never seen them. And, quickly into the first training session, it was obvious that these weren't up to the standard of Northern League anyway. So Charlie Gott had come in to try and put it all back together again, because basically it was building a brand new team. Now, I think Charlie had been out of football for a while. Good bloke, Charlie Gott. But he'd been out of football for a while, so his contact book wasn't probably what it should have been. He brought a guy in called Sammy Harrison again, another great lad, as his assistant. But it just didn't work. It didn't work. He didn't know the players. And then they ended up bringing in Alan Marples from Marsk, he'd done a great job down at Marsk in the Wayside League. He came in, and he brought a lot of the Teesside lads in.
Nice, yeah.
And there was some good players, but it just wasn't working for me. It wasn't working for me. I wasn't enjoying it. It was a bit cliquey with everybody being from Teesside. So I was thinking about leaving, and then I got another phone call off Peter Feenan, who at this time had gone to Brandon.
Yeah.
So I jumped at the chance and went back to Brandon, which was great for the first. It was a good side. They were still in the first division. They were very steady. There was some real good players there, and there was a makings of a good side. Now, I ended up falling out with Peter Feenan for some reason. I didn't know it at the time, but I know now why I fell out with Peter. And this is not from Peter. I found the same thing happened to another player, exactly the same. Now, I used to play on a Sunday. I used to love playing on a Sunday morning with my mates for Bransmouth Castle in Meadowfield. And it was my mates, and we had a good side, and it was everybody I went out drinking with, and everybody I've been going to school with, and we all stayed together. And luckily, we had a real good side, a lot of Northern League players, a lot of good players. And Peter had asked us, he was running Fram Gitmoor Club at the time, who were paying money. He actually offered us more money to play for Fram than I was getting at Brandon. And I just said to Peter, look, I'm not interested, mate. I play with my mates on a Sunday and I enjoy it. So, I'm not interested in it. Like, literally never spoke to us for about 3 weeks.
No way.
And then shortly after that, I got a phone call from Crook Town saying that they'd signed us. I didn't know nothing about it. So I'd been transferred to Crook Town. So I never had a falling out with Peter as such, because we never spoke about it. I just found myself going to Crook Town. Now it was Morris Flint again, who I'd played a bit of junior football with. He was the assistant at Crook Town at the time. And Paul Adams was the manager. So went over there. They were in the second division at the time, but they had a good side. They had had the likes of Mickey Vasey, Jeff Hall, Gary Walton, God bless him, no longer with us, but he was a great player. The likes of Brian Hardy, been around the Northern Leagues for years. John Wren was there again, God bless him, he's not with us. They had a real good side and everything was looking really good. I was enjoying my football. I was getting on great with the lads. It was really good crack. I'd known Morris, I'd known Addo for donkeys. So I was comfortable. I was really comfortable. Then we were about to go for the end of season due. The season had finished. We'd had a fairly decent season. The following year, I think we were odds on for promotion because we were a good side. And then I got a phone call about from the chairman, I think at the time, about am I going to the players presentation end of season due? I said, oh yeah, well of course I am. He says, oh well, we've sacked them. And I said, what? We've sacked Addo. I says, all right. He says, well, none of the players have come at the presentation due. I says, all right. Well, again, it was like, is it me? What am I doing wrong here? So anyway, I thought, well, I'll stay at Crook. I'll stay because I didn't know who was staying, who was going, or whatever was happening. But turned up at Crook, and there was about 3 of the lads that had played previously. I think a lot of them had gone off to Blue Star with Alan Shoulder.
Right, yeah.
The Mickey Vasey and all them, Jeff Hall, Brian Hardy, they'd all gone off to Blue Star with Alan Shoulder. So they brought a guy in called Hughie Hamilton, who again was a lovely bloke. He was at Hartlepool. I think he played for Hartlepool under Cloughie. So they brought him in as the manager, but he didn't know anybody. He didn't know anybody. He didn't know the players. If he'd been at a higher level, that's all he knew. So the players that came in weren't particularly brilliant. And it was a chore. We got a few batterings, and it wasn't enjoyable at all. It wasn't enjoyable at all. And then he got sacked. John Fowler came in, and John brought a lot of Cockfail lads, Cotton Hill area lads in. They were good players, but by that it just wasn't for me by that time. And I was getting a bit probably disillusioned with football at the time as well, even though it was me main love. And then I got a phone call from Kenny Lindo at Anfield Plain, he was playing at Anfield Plain at the time. Would I be interested in going up there? And I said, yeah, why not? So I went up there, and it was brilliant. It was brilliant. They had a great team. A lot of lads who should have been playing Northern League. A couple of lads I played with in the Northern League. But the crack was tremendous.
Yeah.
It was absolutely tremendous. Absolute great set of lads. Everybody was on a tenner. That was it. He used to hand the £10 out in the changing room after the game, So the money thing wasn't an issue. Money had been a problem all the way through. He's getting £5 more than you, and he's getting £10. For me, it wasn't about the money. It was about enjoying the football and going where I enjoyed it, and where I had a chance to win things. Now we did well at Anfield Plain. We did well in the league. We won a couple of cups, Monk Weymouth Cup. We played in a couple of finals. So it was good. It was very good. And then I got the chance to go to Jarroof, and Richie McLaughlin give me a ring. And Richie was telling me about where they'd come from Sunday morning and all this stuff. And he wanted to be in the Northern League, and he was doing this, he was doing that. And I was immediately I was just grabbed by Richie, his enthusiasm, his drive and everything. I just thought, I like this fella. I really like this fella. Yeah. I want to be part of this. So I went to Jarrah, and again, hell of a side. He was paying more money out than most Northern League clubs at the time. So, great side. I had 2 great years there. We won things, at the time as well. You had teams like South Shields in the league. You had Hartlepool Town. They all went on to be Northern League teams, but they were full of Northern League players, But at the time, there was a lot of money around. So these lads could get more playing Wayside League football than Northern League, for some of them. So that was the draw. So it was a really competitive league, that. So it was good, and I loved it at Jarrah Roofing. And Richie, I mean, one of the most genuine blokes I've ever come across in football. A hell of a lot of time for Richie. I haven't spoken to him for a while, but we always used to text each other. We always used to ring each other. But great fella. I mean, we'll get on to a few stories with Richie later on. I mean, that he was absolutely stone mad. I've never seen anybody with the amount of drive and will to win that he had. And as much as people said, you'll never do this, you'll never do that, he did it. Yeah. He did it. So, lot of respect for Richie. Great fella. And after that, I ended up back at Brandon again. So, I think by this time at Brandon, I'd been a mascot for them in the Sunday Cup in the 70s. I'd played for them. I'd captained them. I'd probably had every bloody position at Brandon. So I ended up back there with a really good friend of mine, Dickie Carey, that took over. And I'd played for Dickie on a Sunday, and he was a absolute great fella. And I ended up going back to Brandon. And the first 2 years that Dickie was in charge were tough. They were tough. We had some good players, but it just wasn't clicking for us. It wasn't going right. It's one of them things. I don't know why it didn't work, because the team was good enough. The crack was great. There was nothing wrong. But we just didn't click. One week we'd win 4-0. We batter somebody, and then we'd get hammered ourselves. And it was just one of them things you think, we don't know how this is happening. So after the 2 years, Dickie moved on, and Kenny Lindo came in from Anfield playing. Now I'd kept in touch with Kenny, because back in those days the Northern League finished before the Wayside League. Right. So what the lads used to do for a little bit of pocket money was they'd go and sign for a Wayside League team. In those days, if you weren't contracted, you could sign for a Wayside and a Northern League side. So I used to go back to Anfield playing and play a few games at the end of the season for Anfield playing. And at the time, Kenny was manager there then. And they ended up winning the league that season. And I think they won the Weymouth Cup or whatever. And I played games towards the end. I played in the final, which I wasn't so sure that was the right thing, because I hadn't played that much that season. But Kenny, it's one of the things Kenny used to do. He'd bring, so-called superstars in for cup finals. Like that. Not that I was a superstar, but which, you think, is it the right thing? Is it not the right thing? I remember saying to Kenny, look, I'll go on the bench, mate. I'll go on the bench. Start the lads who's been here all season. I'll go on the bench. If you need us to come on, I'll do what I can. But ended up starting the game and winning some sort of cup. But when Kenny came into Brandon, I mean, he transformed the whole place. Absolutely did. I mean, Brandon were always a good side. Late 80s, early 90s. They lost their way a little bit through the 90s, and then Penn came in and brought some lads with him, and it took off. It absolutely took off. Some of the players that were coming in were just unbelievable. Richie Pitt, Matt Patterson, Andy Cuthbertson, Graham Carter, who I'd played at Branham a couple of times, ex Newcastle, he was there, fantastic. Andy Purvis, Spook, what a player. Davy Robson, been round Wayside League, Northern League for years, and it all just came right. It came right. It was a young team, and it was a good team. The crack was great. It was brilliant, and they got promoted. They played in there. We got beat off Darlington, I think it was, in the Durham Challenge Cup final that season. We got promoted as well, but we gave them a run for the money. And the following season in the first division was consolidation for us. Yeah. We had a good side. We could compete with the best of them, but we were a bit naive in the first season, I think. And we lost games that we shouldn't have lost by the odd goal. It was a bit like we were cocky, we were confident.
Yeah.
We'll score one, we'll score two type thing. But moving up to the next level and playing the better sides, once they got the noses in front, they knew how to shut the doors. And we had to learn quickly, and we had to sort of start using our heads a little bit more. Which to the credit they did. I mean, most of these lads could have played for any side in the Northern League at the time, and went on to win the first division in the end. For the first time ever, Brandon's done it. I don't think they'll ever do it again, unless somebody up there wins a lottery.
That's it.
It was one of those times. I think as a player, I was in that squad. And the squad sort of developed over. It was about 4 years that I was playing towards the back end with them, and it was great. Unfortunately for me, by the time we got to like 2000, 2001, I was just picking up injuries all the time, little niggly things. My Achilles would be aching, my knees would be going. I was just picking up silly little things, which, you would shrug them off in a couple of weeks, but it was taking 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You'd play a couple of games and then bang, your calf would go again. And it's just like, what's going on, And you'd notice little things when you're playing, that lads who you've played against and you would be quite comfortable playing against were all of a sudden beating you to the ball and then run away from you, and you're thinking, going on here? So the signs were probably there, but you're always the last one to read the signs. You're always last. I broke my leg playing on a Sunday, and that did it for me. I think at that point, that was about it. I did get back fit again, but I was still picking up the niggly little injuries. And I said to Kenny, I said, look, Ken, I think I'm about done, mate. And I said, it's not worth it for me. I'll play a couple of games and then I'm crippled for 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. And it's not happening. But I was always a big character in the changing room. I loved messing about, having practical jokes and all that carry on. I was a big character. And I think Kenny asked us to take the assistance role, not because of he thought I was going to be a great coach or anything like that. I think it was because I was a presence around the changing room. And I think that's the reason why he did it. Although most of the teams I played for, I'd captained. I was an organizer when I was on the pitch. I made sure everybody was where they should be. And, I captained most of the sides. I would bollock people constantly if they're in the wrong place. And, I suppose that's, when I think back, that's where, coaching might work for me. So went in there, Kenny, no coaching badges, no nothing. Was basically based on experience and playing. I went off and did some badges, just so I knew what I was doing. But I was sensible about it. I didn't want to take a manager's role. I wanted to serve like an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The time under Kenny was the perfect person to do it, because Kenny had bags of experience. He proved his worth as a manager. He knew what he was doing. And I thought, I'm happy to sit here for a while and just earn me spurs and learn. and I took that time. I went to watch a lot of football. I spoke to various different managers. I spoke to Harry Dunn. I spoke to Tony Lee. God bless him. And they helped me loads. They gave me loads of advice, and that supposed, I think that helped us. It did help us a lot. I wasn't going to go into a manager's job and fall flat on my face. When I went in, I wanted to be ready. And I think sometimes that's what happens with players. They've been great players in their careers, and then they get offered a manager's job and they take it. And honestly, playing and managing is chalk and cheese, absolute chalk and cheese. Same as coaching and managing. A lot of people make that mistake that coaches are good managers. It's two totally different things. Honestly, it really is two totally different things. And that's why you've seen like excellent coaches become managers and fall flat in the face.
Yeah, see it all the time, don't you? Yeah.
It's different. It is. And if you don't recognize that yourself, that's probably the first mistake you're going to make. So that, I won a few things. I won a few leagues. I love playing football. You cannot replace playing football. Coaching, managing doesn't replace it. Somebody said, there's a tablet. You can play another season, but you're going to be crippled after it. Do you want it? I'd say, give us 2 in case that one doesn't work. And the mates I made, and, it just unbelievable. Football was unbelievable for me.
No, it's brilliant, isn't it? I mean, it's funny as well because we're getting on to kind of the coaching side thing now, and it's funny when you listen about when you go into a club and then the manager leaves and you've so many new players coming in, and you kind of think what goes through your head to want to become a manager, but you're seeing kind of Kenny Lindor, Brandon, that first season, the 0-2-3 season, I think it was Division 1 by 7 points. I think we lost four losses in 40 games back then as well, which was quite, as you say, how competitive the Northern League was then. Yeah. It was absolutely amazing. So that was a great taste of, obviously, experience as assistant manager. But that squad as well, that must have been a great season overall for the club.
Oh, I think it'll never be repeated at Brandon. Mm-hmm. As I say, without somebody coming in with a load of money. Unfortunately, Brandon's had hard times for a long time. Now, and they haven't had too bad of a season this season, but they've been scrapping about at the bottom end of the second division for too long. There's some good people in the Brandon. I know the people who's took over at Brandon now, and there's some good people. They've got a good committee. They've got people who've got the hearts in the right place, and they'll do all right. They'll do all right. They'll become competitive, but I don't think it's going to be difficult for them to get into a position where they can go and win the first division, or certainly have a squad as good as what they had.
Yeah,
and that squad wasn't put together with money, by the way. It wasn't put together with money because the budget there wasn't great, and those lads could have earned more money in any other team, and they could have walked into any other team. But the crack and the changing room was so good. That for me is what won the league. When we had tough times, everybody literally pulled together. We really pulled together, and it was a great squad. One of the best squads I've been involved with. Certainly as a player, that was the best squad. But yeah, Brandon was fantastic.
Very good. And then on comes Jarrah Roof. I know we've had Dave on, even Davison spoke about Jarrah Roof, and Peter Levin's been on, and they just said the excitement of the club at the time, and like you mentioned, Peter wanted to put the money behind it and try and progress it up the leagues as well. And you become assistant manager there in 2004 and 5, good mid-table finish. Obviously lead the club to a Vars as well, semi-final losing 2-0 to Didcot. I mean, how was that Vars run, and obviously playing and being a part of the club on the up at that time?
Well, it was unbelievable. I mean, we were the raggy ass Rovers. That's who we were. Nobody liked to come to Jarrah because the changing rooms were dark and dingy, no windows. The pitch, Richie put it together from all sorts of different things. It wasn't a nice place to go, Jarrah, if you're an opposition player. And we thrived on that, to be honest. We built an environment that nobody liked us. Nobody wanted us to win anything. Everybody was against us. And that's sort of the environment we created, and it worked for us. It worked. At the time of that Vars run, we did have a couple of quality players in the side. There was 3 or 4 absolute quality players in the side who would make the difference. The rest would run through brick walls and kick their grannies if they had to. And that's what we had. That's what we had. The spine of the team was very, very strong. We had Gary Hogarth in goal, great goalkeeper, great lad. We had 2 good centre halves. We had a decent centre mid. Justin Perry was playing up front for us, who played in the League of Wales in European competitions and all sorts. Craig Nelson was banging the goals in. I think he scored in every round apart from the semi-final. And we would just take teams by storm. We'd literally, in the first 10 minutes, we'd kick them off the pitch. We'd absolutely kick them off the pitch, and they didn't know what to do with us. And then we'd start playing, because we could play as well. And the key lads that we had, I mean, in that Vars run, Craig Nelson was outstanding. He could have won the games on his own. And, it was great. All the way through that run, we were thinking, when you get into the latter rounds and you start playing against teams from outside the area, I think the first one was we played Dale Town, who'd won the Vars a couple of years before.
Right.
And I remember me and Richie thinking, well, we've done all right. This is it. We're going to hit a quality side here, and this is it. But what we used to do is we'd do our homework. So we would have them watched. If they were close enough for us to watch, we'd watch them. Or, I knew a lot of lads around the country who I could get match reports from, and we did our homework. And I can't stress how important that is. As any young coaches or young managers coming through, do your homework, because that wins you the games. It does. Yeah. And we'd had them watched, and I think the game they played, I think it was, they were first and second in the league, and they beat the second in the league 6-0, something like that. And the match report I got back off my pal was, good luck. He pointed out a few things to us, which we dealt with on the day, and we caught them early doors, and they were like rabbits in the headlights, and they didn't recover for the whole game. They didn't recover. We played with a very high tempo, very aggressive, and they couldn't handle it. They couldn't handle it, and we beat them quite comfortably on the day. And then we got a team, Tipton Town from Birmingham. We got them, I think, in the quarter final. It was going into the latter rounds, and we played them at Jarrah, and they scored early on, and they weren't a particularly good team. But it was one of them games, you're hitting the crossbar, you're hitting the post, you're missing from 5 yards, and you're just thinking, I don't believe it. We've got this far, we're going to have one of them days. There's just nothing here for us. We battered them. Luckily, we scored in the last couple of minutes, which got us a replay. But with Tipton, they played in the Midland League or something, and they hadn't been beat at home for about 2 years. And in the Vars and the FA Cup, I think, you probably only get one chance to win. And that's if you're playing them at home, that's your chance to beat them. Yeah. So when we went down there, the lads were quite confident when we went down there, because they weren't that good, but they'd come to our place to defend. They didn't come there, and with them scoring early on, that's all they did do. They tried to put the shutters up. So we didn't really see what they had going forward, because they spent most of the game with 11 men behind the ball. And like I said straight away, this game will be completely different down there. They'll come at us like a steam train, and it's not going to be the way it was. We're going to be under the cosh. And we stayed overnight. That was the first time we'd stayed overnight. So we got down on Friday night. And funny story from that, we get to the hotel down there, and like we've got the lads sat in this lounge bit, and I'm saying to the lads, right, 10 o'clock bed, nobody out, nobody on the drink, nobody nothing. And I'm going to be coming round. If I catch any, there's going to be World War III, man, I'm telling you now. So off the lads went to bed. So me, Richie, and a couple of the committee lads stayed downstairs in the bar. Got to 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm mortal. I'm absolutely mortal. I'm upstairs. They were getting loads of complaints at the front desk, because I'm upstairs wandering the corridors in my boxer shorts, singing "Tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be Robbie Williams," and giving a rendition of Angel. And I'd read the riot act out to the lads, and I don't know if it was my nerves for the game or what, but the side had got the better of us that night. So even the fact when we were on the bus, we got on the bus to go to the game the next day, and we had to stop the bus so I had to get off and be sick. But it was one of them. But when we got there, it was a very intimidating place. It was a racetrack with a big stand, a smaller scale to Gateshead.
Yes, yeah.
Type of setup. But to get into changing rooms, you had to walk down the side of this big stand. Now, there must have been about 1,500 in already. And as we were walking down the stand, they were spitting on us. They were chucking things at us. And, I could see a couple of the younger lads were like, "Oh, Christ, what the hell's going on?" So we got in the changing room. And it was like, I try to feed off that and say, "Look, we haven't come down here for this, to do this to us, disrespecting us and all of that, carry on," and try to sort of just build a little bit up in them. And the game started, and for the first 20 minutes, we were getting absolutely battered. It was still 0-0, but funnily, me and Richie had gone for a walk on the Saturday morning before the game, and Richie bought a local paper. And he opened the paper up, and he's a double-page spread of this centre forward for Tipton, who was an old-fashioned centre forward, no front teeth, 6 foot odd. Even his own players didn't like him, and just he'd had a bit chew on with Richie in the home game, and he's just in the paper saying, Jarrah's had the chance. That's it. We've never been beat for 2 years, and it really wound Richie up. It really wound him up, and I was just saying, just forget about it. Just forget about it. So about 20 minutes in this game, we're getting absolutely battered. The ball goes out for a throw-in. Richie picks the ball up. So the centre forward comes to get the ball off Richie. So Richie turns his back on him. So the guy puts his arm over his shoulder to get the ball. Richie does no more but just overhand right, just goes bang and smacks his guy straight in the nose. Well, that was it. Boom, it all went up. The two benches were fighting, the players was fighting. It was like a bar brawl. The guy who was covering the game for the Shields Gazette down there, I've got a photograph of it. There's a photograph, and there must be 50 people on the field. They come up with it's literally it was that bad. The police were called, and Richie got arrested. So this is in a Vars game. So Richie got arrested and got took off to the changing rooms. He had to go and sit in the changing rooms. But it worked for us because it broke the game up. The game up. We got a chance to regroup, and we got back in the game. Because they had lost the plot at that point, and it got us back in the game. Well, anyway, the game ended up going to penalties, and we beat them on penalties in the end. But this centre forward had been, as the game was going on, he was getting, blatantly elbows, and just, he's right, old-fashioned centre forward. And he ended up getting sent off. So he'd gone down the tunnel, and Richie was stood outside the change room door. And then obviously he'd seen him. He smacked Richie. And Richie says to me when we were talking about it afterwards, I says, "Did you go down?" He says, "No, I had all the door handle, or I would have done, but I didn't." So Richie's sitting in the changing room, with swollen jaw on him. We go back into the changing room like we've won the game on penalties. We're over the moon. We're going. Richie sat there with a jaw out here. It must have been broke. It's like, what's going on? What's it? Oh, he's come in. And so anyway, we've sort of stormed their changing room, and there's been all sorts gone on. Places basically put us on the bus and sent us off packing, and that was that. So it was a proper intimidating atmosphere, and we had a couple of young lads with us at the time. John Jury, who I'd had through the college, I think he was in the academy there. John was only 17 at the time,
right.
And he was playing for us, and you could see the fear on John's face of what was going on. But it was one of them things. We decided we weren't going to be intimidated. They came at us, and we stood up. And that got us into the semi-final. into the quarter-final against Frome, who again had never been beat for a considerable length of time in their league. They'd won it for a couple of seasons. And at the time, I think they were the favourites to actually win the Vars at that point. And they came up to Jarrah, and they just, I don't know whether they had an off day or what, but we beat them comfortably. We beat them 3-0, I think. We missed a penalty as well. So, but they never caused us any problems at all, which again was surprising. And you think, we're in the semi-final and we haven't had a hard game yet. It's, you're thinking what's going on. These teams with the reputations are coming up from all over the country who have not been beaten on in God knows how long, and we're turning them over quite easily. And we knew what we were. We weren't a great side. Yeah. We knew what we were. So we ended up, there was 4 of us in the semis. Bedlington were in. There was us, there was Sudbury, who beat the final for the last couple of years, real good side, and there was a team called Didcot that I don't think anybody really had took any notice of at the time, and we drew Didcot, and I thought, champion, that's the best. Mm-hmm. That's the best draw we could have got. So we thought we had a chance. So we went down to Didcot. We stayed over again. We went down to Didcot. Good, nice little setup, chocolate block. It was a red hot day. What a team. Absolutely played us off the pitch. It was 1-0 down there. If it had been 5-0, we couldn't have complained. I think we had one chance in the game. We hit the bar, and that was it. They had no weaknesses anywhere. In fact, I don't know if I should say this, but after that game, I went and put a bet on Didcot to win the Vars after that. I thought there can't be anybody better than these. Yeah. So they came up to our place a week later. I said to Richie, they were good football inside. I said to Richie, don't cut the grass. Just leave it. And hopefully it'll stop the football. I says, get the water pipe on the pitch. Let's make it as boggy as we can. Let's just try and, because they were a proper football team. They were zipping that ball about. And I remember going up on the Thursday before the game, and I'm not kidding you, the grass must have been about 8 inches long. And I'm thinking, they're going to call this off, mate. This pitch is not playable. So we had to cut the grass a little bit and turn the water pipe off. But, they came up, they scored in the first 20 minutes, and they comfortably saw the game out. But they were one of the best sides I'd seen for a long time playing at that level. And in retrospect, we'd have been better off getting Bedlington or Sudbury. Mm-hmm. So, there was talk of an all-Northern League final because Bedlington were in one side, we were in the other, but Bedlington got beat off Sudbury in extra time, I think, or penalties, one of the two. So it never happened. But a couple of weeks after that, we played Bedlington in the league. So it was billed as the non-Vars final. We beat them 2-1. So
what could have been?
We should have got Bedlington.
Fantastic,
great run that.
Brilliant. Even Mark, thank you very much for watching. Mark's just saying absolutely fantastic. Yeah, some cracking stories. That's what it's all about. Absolutely brilliant. And moving on to Shildon as well. Obviously, another 9th mid-table finish as well. Cup final as well. Did you enjoy your time at Shildon?
Yeah, Shildon was great. Shildon, fantastic football club. The people involved at Shildon, brilliant. I forget names now, but like people like John Atkinson, Wilf Trey, Barry Humphreys, the committee, Gareth Howe, brilliant people. The setup, the fans, everything. The ladies that used to make the bait and the tea, just fantastic people. Shildon had a good side as well, mind. Gary Forrest was the manager at the time, and he put a decent side together. We'd done really well in the league. We probably should have finished higher that season. I think we ended up finishing 7th, something like that. But we should have finished higher. But we got to the League Cup final against Billingham Town. And again, we should have won it. but that's football. We didn't. So, but great experience. I'd stayed there for the following season as well. And we brought a number of players in, and Shildon were looking really, really strong at that time. And I think we really fancied ourselves to do really, really well that season. And then Bishop just appeared from nowhere, which it was an opportunity to get back into management for me. A big draw as well was Bishop Auckland, the mighty Bishop Auckland, although be it not for a few years. When I was playing and everything, Bishop were one of the top teams. They had the history, they had everything. It was, and people said I was daft at the time because what we were building at Shildon was really good. And I think, Shildon ended up winning the league a few seasons after that and winning a few cups and doing really well. And I think we knew at that time that that's where Shildon was going. So it was a hard decision. It was a difficult decision to make, but because it was Bishop Auckland, I just thought, yeah, why not? Let's have a go. I think I was brought in at the time. They were rock bottom of the first division, and they were a long way from safety. I can't remember how many points it was, but they were a long way, and it was February at that point, so there wasn't long left in the season. People said, you're stupid, you're building something really good at Shildon. Why do you want to go to Bishop? And I think they had brought me there to get them out of the second division. I think everybody expected them to get relegated. I think it was nailed on that they would. In fact, the first time I saw them play, I thought, Christ almighty, I've dropped the right ball here. There was a bit of bad weather at the time, and all the games were called off. So I arranged a friendly match against Shildon, funnily enough, up at Ushamoor on the 3G. And I was just going to stand on the bank, watch them, not get involved. And I watched this game, and they were terrible. They were terrible. I think it was 5-0 at half time. But they did have some decent players, and I think they just lost their way. So I went down at half time, and I just organised them a little bit on the pitch. And I think they didn't win the game, but they won the second half.
Yeah.
So I thought at that point, hang on a minute. They listen to what you say, but they could do something. So it was basically building up their confidence. There was some good players there at the time, some real good players. But the confidence was rock bottom. For whatever reason, they lost a lot of games. And I think sometimes you just get into a rut.
You do, don't you?
You get beat. You get used to getting beat, and when that first goal goes in, the heads go down, and it's really hard to pull it back. But they weren't a bad side. They weren't a good side. Don't get me wrong, but they weren't a bad side, and they had some good, honest lads. And it was a case of just building the confidence and putting some team shape into it. I like to play a certain way, and I got them into a team shape, and I got them into a structure where it was hard to score against them. And we played a lot of counter-attacking football because a lot of periods of the game we didn't have the ball, and rather than chasing it and leaving gaps, we just sort of retreat a little bit and fill the gaps, which I suppose wasn't the most entertaining to watch, but at the time, it's what was needed, because they concede goal after goal after goal. And I think it was about the second game in, we managed to get a win. Second or third game in, we got a win, and it just lifted the changing room. There was a couple of players who were on the fringes at the time, who weren't playing regularly. Peter Jeffries was one of them. He wasn't the first choice goalkeeper when I went in. And I didn't play him in the first game. I played the other lad who had been first choice. But then I played Peter in the second game because I wanted to see them both. And Peter, I was immediately impressed with Peter. Immediately impressed with him. And what impressed me about Peter was he was absolutely fearless. You know, when that ball came in the box, you could see players scatter. You could see them scatter because I tell you, he would run over the top of his granny to get to that ball. And you know, I like that in Peter. And Peter from that point became the number one. And he just got better and better. He'd come to goalkeeping later. I mean, you've had Peter on here. You know, according to Peter, he was a Hartlepool legend at centre forward. I think he's had a few bangs on the head, Peter. He's as mad as a box of frogs. But, you know, he ended up in goal, and to be honest, that's probably why Peter never really went up to the very highest levels. The biggest compliment I could give to Peter is wherever I would go, the first phone call I'd make would be to Peter Jeffries. And I'd include that in the lower echelons of the Football League. He was good. He was as good as anybody. But the thing with Peter and what stopped him, we had a number of clubs come to watch him at the time, was because he'd come to goalkeeping late. His basics, his handling wasn't brilliant. It wasn't watertight. And that's what the pros do. The handling's watertight. Peter's was a bit sketchy, and I think that's what put people off. But for me, he was worth 21 points a season with some of the saves he would make and keep you in games. And, you know, he came to Blythe, he came to concert, he went all over the place. And Peter in the changing rooms was brilliant, was absolutely brilliant. And I'm not surprised he's into this jiu-jitsu now, isn't he? And he's European champion in this. And
winning all sorts.
Aye. Well, just to digress on that, I mean, Peter runs around saying he's European champion. I think, to be honest, I'm the European champion because last time me and Peter had an altercation, he come off the worst. He'll tell you a different story, by the way, but I'll just set the record straight. We'd gone training at Bishop one day, and it had been snowing, so we couldn't really play football. The pitch was covered in snow. So I just says, well, look, we'll have a laugh. We'll get the rugby ball out. We'll have a game of rugby. Well, Peter was a monster, absolute monster. So he's running around this pitch and he's just shaking lads about like rag dolls, and you kind of get near him. And I'm just stood in the tunnel watching them playing and this, that, and the other. And then he starts shouting over to me, "Oh, fatty, get on here, I'll show you," and giving it all out. And I thought, go on, then we'll have a go. So we set away. Peter gets the ball and he starts running towards me. And I thought, oh, shit. I kind of back away. I kind of back down. I'm going to have to just see what I can do here. He's probably going to skittle us. But so I got myself set. And as he come towards us, he dipped his head down and his nose went into my shoulder and I heard the crack. So the next thing, he's on the bottom and the blood's coming out of his nose. Peter tells a story that I give him a sly right hand. I'll just set the record straight now. I didn't, because if I'd have given him a right hand, he wouldn't have been awake. So I'll just set that one straight out. So I think he might have been out for a couple of weeks with his nose. So I class myself as European Jiu-Jitsu champion now. If he wants a rematch, unfortunately, I've been tired. So I can have a rematch.
No, absolutely fantastic. I mean, that first spell at the first season of Bishop, and you kind of said about the points drift, it was, I think, 12 points adrift at the time that we actually wrote down, second bottom, and obviously then safety staying up. And then it was just progression after progression. The Durham FA Challenge Cup, I mean, that was amazing as well. And then also finishing sixth place. I mean, the Challenge Cup and then finishing sixth as well a season after. You must be proud of that, especially the Cup win as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was gutted we finished sixth, to be honest, because at Christmas we were top of the league, and this was when we had Darlington in the first season that they come down the leagues. You had Spennymoor in there, who were a great side. You had West Auckland with Peter Dixon, who were going to Vars finals, and teams like that. Shildon were a top side. You know, the league at that time was very, very competitive. And it was very difficult to get into the top end of the table. But we should have finished fifth that season instead of sixth, because what happened was Spennymoor, obviously, that was the year they won the Vars, and we were playing them in the final of the Champions Cup. So I'm not sure I can't remember, but I think the Vars final might have got moved a couple of times. which then meant that they had to move the Challenge Cup. It wasn't played on the original date that it should have been. And the way it fell, we had to play 3 games in 4 days. And one of them was on the Monday night before the Challenge Cup final. So we were playing Billingham Synthonia at Bishop. And what I did was I couldn't have the lads playing, another game, because I tried to swap it about. We got away with it on the Saturday, but on the Monday, which was the day before, I thought, no, none of the lads that are in the final are going to play. Now, we didn't have a massive squad at Bishop, so I drafted in a load of the under-21s from St Mary's. Westy played, who was my assistant manager. I played. Dion Iyer, who was on the coaching staff.
I remember it now. Yeah.
A couple of lads who were cup tied. They were okay to play, but we really did put a scratch team out, and I think we got beat 6 or 7-0 off Billingham Synthonia. Now, ordinarily, I think we would have beat Billingham, which would have given us the points to finish 5th. So it was a bit of a bugbear that. I know it doesn't sound much, but top 5 finish is better than a top 6 finish in my mind. And we should have done that. But that, as I say, that game was a bit of a non-entity, to be honest. So we played Spennymoor in the final the next night. I mean, I'd played a full 90. I couldn't walk on that game. For me to walk, the dugouts were on the other side of the pitch at Appleton where we played, and I literally took me 20 minutes to walk across that pitch. I was like a cardboard box because I hadn't played football for God knows how many years. And my calf had gone halfway through the second half as well, but there was no subs to bring on, so that was that. I just saw it out. So I was in a fair bit of agony there. There was a few Nurofen got popped during that game, but Spennymoor were the big rivals for Bishop at the time. There was a local derby with West Auckland, but it was Spenny Bishop. That was the main game, and they'd won the Vars, obviously, at the weekend. Then they played us. And to be honest, I think we fully deserved that win. We could have won it by more. We played really, really well. We scored an early goal. Spenny equalised, and then I think we scored in the 90th minute, which was like sort of wasn't the last gap, because I think he played an extra 8 minutes or something like that. It was the longest 8 minutes of my life. But we'd had chances during that game to win it comfortably. But at the end of the day, a win's a win, isn't it?
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
So to beat Spennymoor and win the first cup, I think for about 10 years, that was the first time Bishop would have been in a cup final for 10 years. So for a team like Bishop, and there's a video on YouTube of the trophy presentation, and everybody's involved. The fans, everything, the players, everybody's involved in this presentation. Now, normally you have a table set up and the captain goes up, the lads get the medal and the captain holds the trophy up, and that's it. But it wasn't that. Everybody was in and everybody was celebrating. The fans had the trophy, and you could see how much it meant. It meant a hell of a lot. And that was 4 years of hard graft. Going from where we were when I first went to where we ended up. And the disappointing thing about that was I thought that team was sort of on the verge of doing something really special. Mm-hmm. I was quite confident that we could be competitive the following year and possibly get promotion, because at that point we had a lot of young lads who were very, very good players. We had the right mix of experience. Stephen Salvin was captain, who could have played for anybody in the Northeast and stayed loyal to Bishop. We had Andy Johnson banging goals in for fun. Yeah. We had quality all over the pitch at that point. And all we wanted was a little bit of investment, because Shildon were coming in, Spennymoor were coming in, and they were taking the best players. Spenny were hounding Jeffries. People were hounding Darlow, were after Andy Johnson. And, I went to the chairman and just said, look, we need a little bit more money. We weren't spending a lot of money. We were, if your league position had been based on your budget, we'd have been in the bottom half compared to some of the others. So I asked for a little bit more money just to protect what we had. This wasn't to improve. It was to protect what we had. And it wasn't there. It wasn't available. And I suppose in a way I spat me dummy out a little bit, because my thoughts at that point, when it was flatly refused, I think that was the main thing, that it wasn't even a discussion. It was just refused.
Yeah, straight away.
And I just thought, look, I've spent 4 years putting my heart and soul into this. We've got it to where it could really kick on, and you're not going to back us. So what do I do? Where do I go with this? Because I knew for a fact, if I couldn't bring a little bit more money to the table, I was going to lose 5 or 6 of them players.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then we're going backwards from that point. So it was a difficult decision, and it was a difficult time, because I loved Bishop. I absolutely loved it at Bishop. It was great. When I first went, they were playing at West Auckland, and they'd have 60 people watching them, and to see a club like Bishop in that sort of state, and then knowing that you'd had a hand in sort of trying to get it back on the right lines, it was brilliant. I loved it. And we had a great set of lads. We had a good team by the end of it. We'd moved into the new stadium, which had fantastic facilities. Everything was ready for that club to kick on, apart from they weren't going to back us.
It's crazy, isn't it? Like you say, and I mean, I remember like when they always had on the website the ground updates, you there with your hard hat on, seeing it, and you could just feel something was building as well, as you say, and it got to that point where, right, you've won the cup, what's the next stage? And then obviously that's when the Blythe came along. You just kind of thinking, you knew straight away it was going to go backwards at that point, didn't you?
I did, and that was it. It wasn't an easy decision for me to make. That it really wasn't an easy decision to make. I was very interested in seeing whether I could cope at a higher level. But what I'd built at Bishop was a good team of young lads, and I think they could have gone on if they could have gone on and had played at Bishop for the next 10 years, and Bishop would have had a fantastic team, because these kids were getting better and better season on season. Every time they gained experience, they were getting better and better. And there were some real good players, and most of that team, they went on to play at Conference North level, Northern Premier League, Premier Division. Dan Hawkins, Aaron Weymouth, Andy Johnson, Peter Jeffries, Chrissy Bell. A lot of them went on to play at higher level. Now, for me, if we'd have kept that together at Bishop, I think we were only maybe a couple of seasons away from actually getting promotion back into Northern Premier League.
Yeah,
and I would have been that was the ultimate goal for Bishop, to get back into Northern Premier League. But unfortunately, the club didn't have the wherewithal to do it. I don't blame anyone. I never fell out with anybody at the club. Terry Jackson, I was the chairman at the time. I never fell out with Terry in any way, shape, or form. They just didn't have the finances to kick it on. Now, I can understand their point of view. You're not going to put the club at risk. So they had their job to do. I had mine to do. It just seemed that we'd come to a sort of an impasse. That what do we do now? What do we do now? Because we're going to go backwards. So what do we do? And the opportunity to join Blythe came. And I'll be honest, I had a few sleepless nights over it. I even had a few Bishop supporters ringing us up saying, "Don't leave, don't leave." And I didn't want to. I honestly didn't want to. But at that point, I knew that certain players were going off to other clubs at that point.
Yeah.
So I knew Peter Jeffries was going to sign for Spennymoor. I knew Andy Johnson was going to sign for Darlington. I knew there was other players. Aaron Weymouth was going somewhere else. So I knew I'd lost the good players within that team. And it was a case of, I'm going to have to start again here. I'm going to have to start again. And, what's the point? Because what happens if we spend another 4 years building it up and we get back to a point again where we can kick it on?
Exactly. Yeah.
And we can't. And it was really hard, because I had a lot of friends at Bishop. A lot of the fans at Bishop, lovely people, absolutely lovely people. And I didn't want to let them down either. But at the end of the day, it was circumstances. It was circumstances. I still look at Bishop's results now. You know, I'm still always looking on the Twitter to see how they're doing, and I'm absolutely over the moon that they've had a great season this year, and they're actually getting back to where, you know, they should be, because they should be one of the best clubs in the Northeast. They should be
Definitely.
one of the top clubs. And you know, they've got probably one of the best managers at that level. Chris Hardy at the minute, and he'll do it. They've got to be patient with him. I know last year he inherited somebody else's team. They had a dodgy season. There was a few comments flying about get rid of him and this, that, and the other. He was always going to be judged on what he did this year, and for me this year he's done absolutely fantastic. I don't think he could have done any better from where he was, and I think he's set the foundation now for that club to really be at the top of them leagues next year. Fingers crossed he might do it this year, because
it's changed a bit weak, isn't it?
I'd love them to do it this year. But I think anybody involved in Bishop, if you ask them honestly, are you happy with the season? I think they'd be over the moon with it. Absolutely over the moon. And it might be disappointing in the end. But I think the foundation's there for them to kick on now.
Yeah, I hope they do, as you say. And before we get on to Blythe as well, just touching on to the work that you've done with the colleges. Obviously, that's why I met yourself for a new college, but also working for the English College FA as well. Did you enjoy that, away from kind of the North League, and go looking at obviously the younger players coming through and putting your stamp onto them players and their careers that they had as well at that level?
I did. I mean, I loved the college. I absolutely loved the college, and I took a lot of the college lads to Bishop with us. There was about 7 or 8 of them ended up playing at Bishop. Stevie Turnbull, Adam Strong, Tom Blackett, Lula. There was a few of them that I took. Jakey Richardson. You know, the great thing about the college for me was, you know, I was never bothered about me. It wasn't about me. Winning things and doing things. I love to win. But it wasn't about me. It was about, I looked after the lads. The lads, and I created an environment for the lads so they could thrive. And Stevie Turnbull and people like that, I first come across them in the colleges when they were just boys. They were boys, and I've watched them sort of grow to men and have careers and do really, really well for themselves. You know, I love the fact they've now got families and sort of they've grown up with us, and you know, it was brilliant. And that was one of the hardest things I had to do in football was, you know, I took quite a few of them to Bishop in the early days, and they did really, really well for us. You know, Stevie Turnbull, you've had him on. Honest as the day is long, that kid, he'll run through a brick wall. I don't think he'd be too upset when I say he wasn't the greatest footballer in the world, but he certainly was good enough for me to take him to Blythe, which I did. I had that much faith in him doing a job for us on the pitch, and he knew what job. And, you know, when he's coming through with Bishop and the kids run through brick walls for you for 2 seasons and he's done everything you've asked him to do, but Bishop's moving on as a football club, you've then got to go to Stephen Turnbull and say, look, Steve, I'm going to have to let you go, mate. I'm sorry. We can't go at the next level. That's really, really hard to do when somebody's done that for you. And there was a number of players that's done really well for us. But obviously, the higher you go, not everybody can go there. But you know, I loved it at the college. Billy Horn was a coach that I brought in. I'd known Billy a long time. Billy's a great fella. And we had Big Daz Ross. We brought him in on the coaching team. Ex-academy player. Well, player in the loosest sense of the word, mate. But he turned up now and again. But Darren was brilliant, and Darren was good with the lads. And again, it's about creating an environment that people can thrive in. That for me is the key to management. And it's all about knowing your players. You've got to get to know your players. You've got to know the ones you can bollock. You've got to know the ones that need an arm around them. I used to know them players better than they knew themselves. And I knew if they weren't in a good mood. I knew if there was something going on in the background just by the the manner, the demeanour, and for me, that's part of management, and it's how you motivate people. That's management. The management team itself, you've got to have the right people around you as a manager, and you've got to bring mixers to the table. And probably one of the best signings for Bishop was John Bottomshine, bringing him in as goalkeeper coach, because what he did with Peter Jeffries was unbelievable. Peter was raw, properly raw, and Shiny turned him into a top class keeper, absolutely top class keeper. But Shiny was great around the changing rooms. He played to a good level himself. He knew the game inside out. And he was a good sounding board. Stephen West, he was assistant manager at Bishop. He played for Bishop for years. He knew the club inside out. These people, I could trust them with my life. And that's what you need around you. You need your management team to be 100% trustworthy. They could tell me I was talking absolute rubbish on some decisions, and I'd listen to them. And you got to take that into account. And that's what management for me is about. Is you creating environments, and in the college we created a great environment. The lads, it was a laugh. It was an absolute laugh.
Yeah. Oh,
in all seriousness, when I first took over the academy, I think you were in it. But I in the first season, I wasn't coaching. I think I'd been brought in to oversee it because it wasn't going as well as it should have been. And I think a few of the academy lads were causing a bit of bother around the college. Let's say the discipline wasn't brilliant. And I'd been asked to come in just to oversee it and give me point of view on it. And it wasn't until after that I got involved in the coaching side of it and actually running the team. But at the time, I think there was one academy team, and they were playing North East Colleges League, and it wasn't great. But by the end of it, we'd been promoted up to the Northern Premier League in the ECFA, which was one of the top leagues. I think we got to the semi-final of a national cup, and we won a couple of local trophies. And we had a good academy, and in the end we had 4 men's teams, 1 girls team. So there was a lot of work had gone into it. In fact, it was that successful recruitment wise. I remember the head of school pulled me in the office one day and said, "It's too big. Can you slow down a bit? It's too big." And I said, "Well, you told me to do this." So it got too big, but we had some good sides and some good lads, and we went from North East Colleges League up to competing nationally. We were one of the best sides at the time in our Premier League. We had Gateshead, who were head and shoulders fantastic. I mean, Brycer had a great academy there. They were streets above everybody else. East Durham had Brian Honor, and they were a good side. Monk Wearmouth had Lee Picton and Graham Fenton. Middlesbrough had Andy Torman. These were top guys working in these colleges. So the league was very, very competitive. And it was great. I loved the college. And how England colleges came about, Brycer had been with them for a number of years. And I think Brycer had gone off to Sunderland. He'd left Gateshead College.
Yes, yeah.
Went off to Sunderland at some point. And I just got a phone call from one of the executive board of the ECFA saying, would I be interested in coming down to South Leicester College for an interview about joining the national squad? I was like, God, would I be interested? Definitely. So I went down and I spoke to them. Had a good long conversation with them, and then I got a phone call to say we'd like to offer you the position as a coach, which I went to the college and said, look, I've been offered this position. It's great for the college. However, I work full time here, but we've got development weekends, we've got trial days, we've got tours in Italy. It's going to mean me taking time off college. Are you okay with that? And to be fair, the college, they were brilliant. They were absolutely brilliant. They did everything. They bent over backwards for us. I was a bishop at the time as well, and they bent over backwards for me as well. I was away from Bishop a few times, and they were great about it. But it was absolutely fantastic experience to go to Italy and sort of represent your country and playing against some top teams, the Italians, the Romanians, the Croatians. And it was funny in a way because we were English colleges. And when we went away to play in the tournaments, we weren't playing Romanian colleges. We were playing the Romanian under-18 national squad, the Croatian under-18 national squad. So, they produce a program for the tournament. So we've got our guys listed as, Gateshead College, Worthing College, South Leicester College. And then you look at the other teams and it's Juventus, Napoli. You're just thinking, really hell. We might struggle here a little bit. But we didn't. We held our own. The first we did 2 tours of Italy, 2 tournaments. The first one was the Roma Kappa Mundi tournament, which still goes on now, I think. And it was 2 groups, and in our group we had Italy, San Marino, Croatia, and Romania, I think. And we did really well. But Romania that year they were brilliant. They were absolutely head and shoulders. They beat us 5-0. We drew with Croatia. We beat Italy, but we got beat 5-0 off Romania, and they ended up winning the tournament because it was 2 groups, but only the top 2 teams played in the final. So Romania won that, and then we went to play in a tournament in Gubbio, again in Italy, and I think we had San Marino and Romania again in our group. So yeah, we got our asses kicked off Romania again, but it wasn't 5 this time. I think it was only 2. So we give a better account of ourselves. But fantastic experience.
Amazing,
we used to take the lads down Lillyshaw for development weekends, and all your friendlies were. I remember going to Reading Academy, and you're playing professional teams, and you were playing against Ireland, we were playing against Wales, and it was unbelievable when they playing that national anthem before a game. It honestly makes the hairs on your neck stand up. It's I was standing there thinking, Christ, what am I doing here? Is this happening? Is it real? And it was brilliant experience, and I've got a lot of memories of that, and great memories. We had some good players who went on to pro football and spent long careers in football. And there's still a couple of them kicking about now. Tommy Taylor at Darlington, who's in goal, he was part of that squad. He was a great player. Joe Leasley, who was at Darlington last year, he was part of that squad. Joe Bunny, who played at Rochdale, Blackpool, all over the place, he was part of that squad. So these were top players. They worked with some of the better players, certainly the best at the college level. But the way the academies were set up was these were all ex-academy players anyway, who'd been released at 16 and were still looking to get back into the game. So you came across some fantastic players. It was great experience.
Oh, amazing. Like you say, like my experience with college, and I know it doesn't matter whether you see one of the lads like Daz, or I've got a Newcastle match talking to Hartley the other day as well. And literally speaking to the lads, and the laughs, the memories that you have just in the changing rooms, on the bus going away, games that we used to do, and it was absolutely fantastic. And I know personally, like I think you were just going at the A team at the time, and like you say, when I was doing my first year in the B team, I think I was top goal scorer and stepping up, and it was just like, right, here we go. But I don't know why I've always been the same, that confidence where I just didn't take the next level. But it doesn't matter if you're watching over training, if you're in the hall, we're doing the bleep test. I just want to run my socks off just to show you, impress what we could do. I know there's one day I think I came first, but I collapsed after the bleep test almost. But I came out and did 1,000 sit-ups. And you had the 18 one corner, you were saying, look, that's what you need to do. He's on his 900 sit-up now. And here we go. And it was just like, because you just wanted to work hard for yourself. It was the presence. It was just wanting to push on and show you what you could do. But it was like amazing time, wasn't it, really? It was class, absolutely.
As I say, it was all about creating that environment, wasn't it? And you know, I'm still in touch with a lot of the lads now. And, you know, they still ask me for advice. Some of them's gone into management themselves and they still ask me for advice. And, you know, that's really nice for me. That's worth everything for me, that the lads have that amount of respect for us to ask us things and still run past. You know, Stevie Turnbull asked us to play in the charity match. I says, Steve, I can't fasten my shoelaces now. But I says, there's no chance of me playing the charity match. But that's what made it all worthwhile for me, and a lot of the players that played for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wasn't everybody's cup of tea, because I was quite strict, and lads had to do what I wanted them to do. And if they didn't, they knew about it. And I didn't get on with everybody, but, you know, anybody that showed me loyalty, I think they got that back in spades. And they had an experience which, you know, they'll never forget, and they still go on about it now. And for me, that's what it's all like, because when you get a bit old and a bit grey, which I am now, I'll not say fat or a body like a bag of soup, like Peter Jeffries described as. That's the type of stuff, you know. Your medals and everything are nice, but it's the relationships that you've built. And, you know, I've still got some great relationships with people who played for me. And, you know, it's great to see what Busted and Belly are doing at Gateshead. I love all that. Yeah. You know, Busted played for me. Busted was in the academy as well at New College Durham.
Right.
You know, Chrissy Bell played for me at Bishop, one of the most talented players I've ever seen, Chrissy Bell. It took me years to sign him. I would pester the life out of him to come and sign for us, and I eventually did get him. But to see them lads, you know, doing what they're doing now, it's brilliant. And, you know, to think that you might have had even a small part in that is great, even if you showed them how not to do it. You know, that's what I love to see. That I love to see it.
No, it's amazing, really. And then getting on to Blythe just before we get on to a quick fire round as well. I mean, the time that you had at Blythe and under Tom Wade, and the players, I mean, we just talked about before we came on, and I mean, we always had a few players on from the cup run that's been on as well. Absolutely fantastic time. I mean, playing at St James's Park, the FA Cup. And speaking about the FA Cup as well, I know we've had a few players on, and you'll speak to other people and they'll say, well, they got knocked out of this round, but people forget you've got to go up through so many qualifying rounds just to get to that point. And before you even beat knocked out Hartlepool, the amount of teams that you had to play, and there was some good sides that you knocked out. Could you feel the confidence building kind of stage by round that you could go on a bit, go on and do something?
Oh, yeah. I mean, most of them games we played away as well, by the way.
Yeah.
We had a spell of about 6 or 7 weeks where we never played at home. We were travelling constantly. I mean, the cup run itself was absolutely fantastic, and there was loads of ups and downs in it. I think first qualifying round or whatever round we came in at, we played 7 games, I think, before we got to the proper rounds. We drew Darlington away. And at the time, Darlington were a fantastic team. And to be fair, they battered us in that game, absolutely battered us. And we managed to get a draw. But the replay at Blythe, we were on fire that night, and we battered them 3-0, I think. So that wasn't the greatest draw we could have got. So we got through that, and then in the next round, I think we got Skelmersdale, who were top of our league.
Yes, that was I. Mm-hmm.
And we're absolutely flying, Skelmersdale. I think we played them a couple of weeks before, and they beat us 5-0 or something like that. That might be my memory, but they were a great side. We drew them away as well. So it was like, at that point, you think, well, the gods is against us here. But we went down there, and again, we were brilliant on the day, and I think we beat them 4-1. And I think that might have been the first game they had lost in that season. So, you know, that was a great result. And I think we ended up at Micklehove at one point. They were a division below us, but we're right at the top of that division at the time. And we got through that by the skin of our teeth. We scored early on there, equalised, and then we scored in the last couple of minutes. Jarrett Rivers scored. So we got away with that one by the skin of our teeth. They were a real good side. And I think in the last qualifying round, we got Lake Town. Again, they were a league below us, but they were going for promotion. They were a good side. League was probably, I know it sounds a bit silly, but that was my highlight of that cup run, I think, because of the circumstances around League. We got lost on the way to Lake Town. God knows where we ended up, but we got lost on the way down. It was a 3 o'clock kickoff, and I don't think we got the ground till after 2:30. And we asked the referee if we could have a little bit extra time to warm up and get ready, and they flatly refused. No chance. Yeah. Kickoff's 3 o'clock. So we went out in the first half, and we got absolutely battered. That was shutty in for them. And if it wasn't for Peter Jeffries, we were out. Peter Jeffries had made saves earlier on. He saved a penalty at Darlington in the first round, in the first game we had, which kept us in it. He kept us through that cup run. And that first half at League, without Peter, we could have been 5 or 6-0 down. Luckily, we were only 2-0 down. But at that point, we looked dead and buried. They properly battered us. So we went in at half time. There was a few home truths said. There was a bit of shouting and bawling. There was a couple of things said. A couple of individuals were picked out. But by God, they went at it in the second half. And I think within 10 minutes of the second half, it was 2 apiece. We'd got ourselves really back in it. Stevie Turnbull, Neil Hooks, Damon Mullen were outstanding in that second half. Absolutely outstanding. And then, as ever, Robbie Dale, the King of Blythe, steps up and puts us in front. And you're thinking, this is how we got here. At that point, we were cruising. And then Jarrett Rivers puts one in the stanchion as well, and you're 4-2 up. And you're thinking, brilliant, that's champion, you know. Then 5 minutes to go, they get a penalty, and he scores the penalty. It's now 4-3. And then literally last kick of the game, the referee gives them another penalty, which was never a penalty in a million years. I don't think the first one was, but it was never a penalty in a million years. And you're just thinking, Jesus, how many emotions do you have to go through in this game? And the lad steps up to take the penalty, and he missed it. And I think he blew the whistle shortly after, and it was like, I remember at the end of the game, I didn't have anything left in us to celebrate. And Mark Carruthers, who was the press bloke at Blythe at the time, I remember he did an interview with myself and Tom after the game on a podcast, and I couldn't actually speak. I couldn't speak. My voice had gone, everything had gone. And I think the first question he asked was, how do you feel after that, Colin? And I went, I'm absolutely emotionally drained. I need to lie down. I've experienced every emotion possible in this game. It's the best game of football I've ever been involved in. And it just, you know, I'm going to have to give it a couple of days to sink in what's happened here, because we weren't even thinking about we've made the first round at that point.
Oh, best,
It was just, how the hell have we got away with this? So we did. Now that for me was the best game in the cup run. And in the first round we got Altrincham at home, which was a little bit disappointing on one hand, because obviously you get the first round, you want the Football League club because you're thinking it's first round, that's probably the end of the run. So we got Altrincham, who were conference at the time, and they were doing all right. And then you think, well, actually, it's a conference team, so why couldn't we beat them, especially at home? And we set out with a proper game plan in that game, and the game plan was to pin them back in their own half straight away, first 15 minutes, and just play with a very high tempo, high press. And they couldn't cope with it. They really couldn't cope with it. And I think at one point we went 2-0 up. And then they scored to make it 2-1 in the second half, and you're thinking, right, here's the onslaught. But it didn't come, and we got better in the game. And Robbie Dale scored a great goal, and then Nipper finished it off. And we beat them 4-1, and we beat them quite convincingly. So that was like second round. So we thought the draw was a little bit of kinder to us then. And then in the second round, we got our Football League club, and it was Hartlepool away. But at the time, Hartlepool were really struggling. They were at the bottom of the league. They were really struggling. I went to watch them quite a few times, and they were quite strong in the first half, but they seemed to fade every game in the second half for whatever reason. I don't think it was a fitness thing. It was more a confidence thing than anything else, because when teams got on top of them, they tended to implode a little bit. So we were the match of the day game as well. So everything was on match of the day. It was a Friday night. It was freezing cold that night. I always remember that night. And we set out in the first half to be in the game by half time. So we would have been quite happy to come in 1-0 down at half time. 0-0 would have been perfect for us. And Danny Maguire, Nipper, bless him, he played up front on his own in that 45 minutes, and he ran the full-back four. He ran himself into the ground in that first half. You know, the graft he got through, he didn't touch the ball much, but the graft he got through, you know, it was a good performance. We got a bit of a battering. I watched sort of the game after, and everybody's saying at half time, you know, this could be a heavy defeat for Blythe. They need to get themselves on the front foot or they're in trouble, and you know, this, that, and the other. But we knew what the game plan was, and we were going to go out in the second half and we were going to have a go. We were going to have a real go at them in the second half. And then Stevie Turnbull's free kick. Funnily enough, I don't know if you've had Stevie on, I don't know if he mentioned it, but we were training on the Thursday night at Blythe, a little light training session, and we were doing some set piece work, and we had Stevie on the free kicks, and he must have put 2 over the houses that night. We ran out of balls. It was that bad. To the extent where I think me and Tom even discussed taking them off the free kicks for the following day. It's a good job we didn't. And then he goes and does that, you know, and he puts it right in the top corner. Absolutely brilliant. And then Jared goes and scores the winner on the 90th minute again. There was 6 minutes of added time, so it wasn't the end of the game, but you know, he did that. And on YouTube, when you watch the clip of that, and there's a clip, I think it's from behind the goal, where Jared picks the ball up and he's running towards the goal, and you can see the dugout behind, and you can see us all get up in the dugout because we'd seen Jared through the league all season get the ball in that position and stick it in the back of the net. So you'll see it, everybody stands up and thinks, "This is it. This is it." And sure enough, he stuck it in, and you know, after that, the whistle went about 6 minutes after that, and it was like it was a bit of a blur, to be honest, for me after that. I can't really remember much of what happened after the game. The only thing I do remember was spitting feathers because Hartlepool wouldn't let us go in the bar after the game, and they didn't put any refreshments on for us and this, that, and the other, which I thought, well, you know, sod you lot, we'll go and celebrate somewhere else. But apart from that, you know, it was a great experience. And then we got Birmingham in the third round. You know, Stevie Turnbull went down for the draw, and I know he said on the telly when the draw was live on the telly, it was a bit of an anticlimax getting Birmingham. You know, and I think his words were taken not in the wrong way, to be honest. It's great playing any professional side, but when you've got the opportunity to play Arsenal, Man United, Chelsea, and you get Birmingham, it is a little bit disappointing. But you know, the day itself against Birmingham, it was the weirdest day in football I've ever had, that because we were expecting a tough game. We'd worked hard in training all week. We'd worked on a team shape that we were going to play, and it was all about stifling the opposition. That's what it was all about. But as it panned out in the first half, I think they'd come to shut the gates as well a little bit. We didn't expect, and we didn't expect that. So, you know, after about 5 minutes, I was like, right, let's get on the front foot. Let's go to plan B now. Let's get at them. And we ended up 2-0 at half time, and it was a comfortable 2-0. And you get the guys in half time, and everybody's on the ceiling in the changing room. And, you know, we must have spent 5 minutes trying to pull them down off the ceiling. And
I can imagine.
Down and, you know, trying to just settle everything, because we knew they had to come at us at that point. We knew there was going to be an onslaught. So we went out with a game plan, but unfortunately the lads didn't pull it off. You know, and they made a subtle change. They played Zigic up front in the first half, 6'7", They went long to him a lot of the time, but he wasn't winning the headers. Buddle was dominating them. He wasn't winning the headers. So what they did was they swapped him and Thomas. So they put Thomas onto Buddle on the back line.
Nice.
Thomas was pacey, and they dropped Zigic 10 yards deeper. And they were playing into channels, and Thomas ended up scoring 2 goals. And I think he outpaced the defence for the first one with just his pace. I think if they'd have left it the way it was, we might have got something out of that game. But obviously, that's professional managers can see things, and they managed to pull it off. Which was at the end of that game, my overriding feeling was disappointing. It was disappointment. We were 2-0 up, and if we'd have just managed to hang on to that for 15, 20 minutes in that second half, I think it would have been a different game again. And we had a couple of chances towards the end. Danny Maguire had a chance. Danny Parker had a header, which on another day, if they'd done better with them, we could have got a replay out of it, which I think is the least we deserved at the time. So me overriding, me feeling straight away after that game was disappointment. We've had a 2-goal lead and we've let it slip. I went in the change room after that and didn't say a lot. I didn't say a lot because I didn't want to, because I was so disappointed. And I think if I'd have started talking about it, I'd have started bollocking them. And to be honest, it was a massive achievement that they'd done. So, I think we had a team meeting a couple of days later in training, and we just sat down, we talked about it, and we just said, look, what a fantastic achievement. Some of you will never achieve this again. Just you got to move on from it. And we had a sort of baptism of fire from that game that we ended up playing Farsley on a Tuesday night away in the freezing cold, and that was down to earth with a bump, and I think they beat us as well. So that was down to earth with a bump. That was definitely the announcement. Your cup runs over, lads. It's finished. You're back on an even keel now. But that season, I think we started off with a target of being in the playoffs. That's what we want. We just missed out the season before, and that's bearing in mind that the couple of seasons before I went to Blythe, they'd been relegated from the Conference North. They hadn't done very well in the first season in the Northern Premier League. They were down the bottom end. They were really struggling. We just missed out on the playoffs on the first season. And the second season, that was the target. And they missed out again. But I think at one point we were 8 or 9 games behind everybody else with the cup run.
It was massive, wasn't it? Yeah.
And that's what killed us. That's what killed us in the end, as to making the playoffs. But no, it was a fantastic experience, probably never to be repeated. And it was great. It was great.
No, really good. And before we get on the quick fire as well, obviously after Blythe Spartans, then it's moved to Concert and Crook as well. I know we've kind of spoke about messages as well. Kind of when you're looking back now, kind of was it the right move? Was it not? I mean, did you enjoy it? Did you kind of think, right, this could be the end now with the management? These obviously moving to Concert and then to Crook and then the assistant manager Bishop as well. Did you enjoy that, or did you know it was time for like a little break from management at that point?
I should never have left Blythe. I'm pig-headed. I've always been pig-headed. I've always been stubborn. I've always been volatile. Sometimes you need to let your head take over and think things through logically. As a player, as a manager, I wore my heart on my sleeve. As I say, I wasn't everybody's cup of tea because, I would upset people. I could upset people. I didn't do it with any malice, but it was just the way I was. I wore my heart on my sleeve. And at Blythe, we had a fantastic team, a fantastic young team. And the reasons why I left Blythe will probably stay with us, but let's just say I didn't say eye to eye with some things that were going on in the club. And wrongly, I took the decision to leave. And that Blythe team, again, went on to do even better things. It did get promotion in the end, went in the Conference North. It's a shame to see where they are now, but they did that with predominantly the side that me and Tom built. It was predominantly the same players that took them up through the promotions. So, if I hadn't been so hot-headed, I should have stayed there and should have seen that one through a bit more. But me being me, I didn't. Opportunity came up at Concert. Wrong club, wrong time. It was as simple as that. Concert had ambitions, which matched mine, to be honest. They wanted to be Northern Premier League and this, that, and the other. I met with Frank Bell. I was impressed with what Frank had to say. Early signs were great. But the thing with Concert was, I think they'd underachieved for quite a while. For a few seasons, he'd been up and about, but had underachieved. And Kenny had been the manager for a long time, and he wasn't well. He'd had a heart attack at one point, and he'd come back as the manager, and obviously that's going to affect you. So when I went in at Concert, there was players that had been there a long time, and there was players for me that weren't pulling their weight. They were getting decent money, but they weren't pulling the weight. Yeah. And it wasn't about the team. They weren't bothered about the team. It was about them. It was about them picking the wages up. So that was great with some of them when I got rid of some of them. But to be honest, when I wanted to move others on, it didn't sit right with other people within the club, shall I say? Be very dramatic. And I started hitting a few walls. Which was disappointing, but that's what happened. That's what happened, and I'd always said that wherever I go, I've got to control the football. I've got to control what happens on the pitch. If I don't control that, then there's no point me going there.
Exactly.
Why would you employ a manager and then want to interfere with what he does? It doesn't make sense. But the signs were there, and I just thought, no, it's not for me. It's not for me. Some great people at Concert. Again, I never fell out with anybody at Concert in any way, shape, or form. It was just wrong club, wrong time. They've gone on and done brilliant, and I'm pleased to say that they've gone on and done what they've done. I'd like to think I put a few foundations in there for them to build that, because I changed a lot of things. I made a lot of changes. I might have made too many changes too quick. In hindsight, I don't know. But I like to run things a certain way, and I like things to be done a certain way. And, I didn't do, the unprofessional stuff. I wanted everything to be top draw. I wanted lads to feel special. It's about creating that environment again. So I left Concert, and I got a phone call from Vince Kirkup at Crook, and he said, would I be interested in the manager's job? And I said, but you've got a manager, haven't you, Vince? And he's like, well, I don't think we're going to be keeping him. I said, well, don't be ringing me if you've got a manager in place. I'm not speaking to any team that has a manager. So no, I'm not interested in having a conversation with you. So a couple of weeks later, I think they'd sacked the manager, and he come back on the phone, and I said, look, I'll help you out at the end of the season. That's it. That's all I'll do. Went in a Crook. There was no money. It was
that's it, isn't it?
Difficult for them. It was very difficult for them. They'd been on a bit of a downward spiral. Crook's a great club, absolutely fantastic club, steeped in history again. And it come to the end of that season, and I was going to take a break there and then, because I thought, I was getting a bit peed off, if I'm honest, with people having expectations that were just not realistic. To what the budgets were and things like that, and you were being made promises that things were going to happen, and it wasn't happening, and I was just getting a bit paid off with the game at that point, I think. So my intention was just to take a break at the end of that season and just see what happened. But if you've ever met Vince, he'll sell sand to the Arabs. Vince, he's a good bloke, Vince. He's a really good bloke. And I went to Crook, and I was clear to Vince that this was a long-term job. It's long term. Your budget isn't fantastic, but it's going to take time to build something here because you literally were on the bones of your backside. Things didn't start off very well. They didn't. We didn't get the results that we expected. We weren't in any danger of relegation or anything like that. But I think Vince's expectations compared to reality at that point weren't matching up. He said to me at one point, I've got the golden ticket. I've got you as my manager. I've got the golden ticket. And it's like, there's no golden ticket, man. It's work and it's time. There's no quick fix to this. But it didn't work out. And I ended up leaving Crook. Again, never fell out with anybody, no animosity, anything like that. And then I got a phone call from Steve Riley about going back to Bishop as an assistant, and I went to see Steve Riley. And to be honest, I shouldn't have gone back. That I'd been at Bishop. I enjoyed it. I'd had a great rapport with the fans and everything. I'd achieved things there. And I shouldn't have gone back, but I did because I let my heart rule my head on that one. And I went back and very quickly we had a fans forum in the clubhouse. And I was sat there and the same things were being discussed that I'd heard 6 or 7 years before that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I thought, this club hasn't progressed. It's progressed nowhere. The same issues are here. It's still here. And at that point, I thought, shit, what have I done? But what compounded it, we went to first pre-season training session and there was 3 people there.
Oh, yeah.
Steve, what's happening? What's going on? And Steve did his own things. He was, just in my opinion, he was very relaxed. The players did what they wanted. The players were running the club at that point. Even to the extent where the board had a meeting with the players when they got rid of Steve. And the players were so disrespectful to the members of that board. It was unbelievable. I was sat in that room and I wasn't going to say anything. And the way they were behaving, I just went, right, I'm going to stop you there, lads. I said, because if you'd have behaved in an appropriate manner and done what you should have done, Steve Riley would have still been sat here now. But he's not. So yous have got to take accountability for that. Because yous haven't done the right things here. So it was tenuous from the off. And the difficulty for me in that position was there was a lot of contracted players. I think there was about 10 contracted players at the time, and they were getting really, really good money. I wouldn't have contracted half of them. I wouldn't have certainly not given them the money that they were getting. But the difficulty for me was these lads were prepared to sit on these contracts. They weren't prepared to go anywhere else. They wouldn't have got the money they were on anywhere else. So it became a bit of a battle to bring players in because you only had so much of your budget. So you were limited to what you could bring in because you still had to pay these lads on contracts and that anyway. I mean, some of the lads were great. Don't get us wrong. There were some lads on contracts that were great. But there was an element there that weren't happy with what was going on. And were sabotaging is a tough word, but they weren't allowing things to progress as they should. But I mean, I did say when I took over as manager, because I'd had time to look at the team at that point, and I said, look, if we finish 4th off bottom this season, that's a result. That's a result. That's how bad I think this is. And that's exactly what we did, by the way. We finished 4th off bottom. So, that was probably the toughest job that I ever had, was keeping them in that league, because I had a core of players that didn't want to play for me. They didn't. Because the club at that point was their meal ticket, and I was trying to take that away from them. And I understand that, and there's no animosity towards me to any of these players. I've spoken to some of these players since we left. A lot of them wouldn't have liked this. Well, they wouldn't. That's their choice. There was a couple of them I didn't like, to be honest. But that was the situation that we had. So it was a constant battle in that changing room. It really, really was. And it was difficult to move players out to get the players in that I wanted. So it was tough, but I would probably rank that quite high on the achievement list, even though we didn't win anything and we finished 4th off bottom, because keeping them in the league at that point, I thought was a great achievement. Now, some people think, he finished 4th off bottom, that's low expectations. But from where that team was to what we actually finished up with was a massive stride. And then the League Cup final as well, to finish the season off, which was, again, it was so tough. We had Dunstan in the final, who Dunstan were a fantastic team. Fantastic football club, Dunstan. I think, Dunstan's a football club through the years that other clubs should look at and mirror what they've done. They've got fantastic people at that club. They back their managers 100%, and they've got longevity with their managers. You don't see Dunstan where a manager comes in, he's out in 6 months, or he's out in
exactly.
How many managers they've had over the years, and they've had good top lads, and they've backed them to the hilt. And I think that's why a club like Dunstan has the success that it has. It's similar to Spennymoor in a way. When you look at, I always go back to that night at the Durham Challenge Cup where we beat Spennymoor, and you look at where Spennymoor have gone from that night, and you look where Bishop went from that night, and that was down to decisions made. Because everybody says Spennymoor's got a massive budget, this, and Brad piles this in and piles that in. That's not all the truth. It's not. There's a hell of a lot of work going on at Spennymoor on the background to build up a sponsorship, to build up a database of people who invest in the club. So it's not all Brad's money. Brad's brought it together, and he's done a fantastic thing. I mean, I was at a game the other week at Spenny, and for some reason I was in the executive bit. I didn't think I'd ever get in there, but I did. I mean, funny story from that. We once beat Spennymoor in the league in the early days when I first went to Bishop, and there was a lad who lived in Spennymoor, and he worked with me at the time, and he said he drove past the ground the day after the game, and there was a teddy hanging from the Spennymoor arch at the ground with my name on it, and took a picture of it, and I've got the picture, and I loved it. I loved that. I thought that was brilliant. So a teddy hung with my name on from the arch. So that was one of my good things. But Spenny ground and everything at the minute, the setup is just it puts both clubs to shame.
Fantastic, isn't it?
And looking at things that they were a Northern League side, and that's where you can go. That's where you can go. And not a lot of people know this, and this might not go down with the Bishop massive, but I was once manager of Spennymoor. Not a lot of people know that. It only lasted 5 days. But how that came about, it was Ken Houlihan. When Spennymoor went bust, and Evenwood Town sort of moved to Spennymoor under Ken Houlihan. They had a season in the second division, and the following season in that summer, Ken rang me up and asked me if I'd be interested in coming to manage Spenny, and I said yes, I would. And at the time, because I'd just left Jarrah at the time, and I wasn't going anywhere, so I said yeah, I would be interested. So I went to meet him. We did the doings and reached agreement. And then about 5 days later, I went to a board meeting. I was invited to a board meeting, and on one side of the table you had the Spennymoor lot, and on the other side of the table you had the Evenwood lot. And literally they were offering each other out in the car park halfway through this meeting. And I just thought, I'll see you later, lads. That's not for me. So my tenure at Spennymoor lasted 5 days. But what I always say about that is I never lost a game. Never lost a game when I was at Spennymoor.
Quality that, like. I finished off with our quick fire round on the spot here, so some cracking answers I can imagine coming here. As a player, first of all, what was your best football memory as a player?
As a player, I've got to say it's from a Sunday morning game. It's not a Northern League game, this. as I've said earlier on, I used to play for Meadowvale Bransford Castle on a Sunday morning with all my mates who I went to school with, who I grew up with, who I went drinking with. It was a very special team, and we had some really good players. We did really well. We used to play in the Premier League, and we got to a cup final. I can't remember which one it was. Might have been Ramside All Cup Winners' Cup or something like that. I don't know. And it was played at Chelsea Street against Sherburn Club. And at the time, Sherburn Club were paying a lot of money out on a Sunday morning and had the Mickey Taylors and they would have won the Northern League with the team that they had. And we played them at Chelsea Street in the final, and we were the proper raggy ass Rovers. I remember Mickey Carroll was playing for them, and Mickey was a great player. And I was playing right back, and Stouty was playing right midfield in front of me, and we were literally just taking turns to swap over and kick Mickey Carroll for about the first 20 minutes. I'm not sure. I think Mickey went off at half time because he was black and blue after we finished with him. But that's what we did. And I think we were 2-0 down at one point in that game, and they were cruising, and we got it back to 2-2, and then we scored to go 3-2 ahead. And I can always remember this. They were all over us, and it was like all backs to the wall. And they brought Mickey Taylor on as a sub. I mean, Mickey was a great player, great lad, Mickey. God bless him. And as he's running onto the pitch, he just said at the top of his voice, right, let's send these bastards home with their tails between the legs. And that just set us off. I mean, at one point, there was a lad who used to play for us, Anth Carey. He was doing keepy-ups with Mickey Taylor on the halfway line at one point. And we ended up seeing it out. We won the game 3-2. And it was the fact that, nobody thought we were going to win the million years. We did win, but it was with me mates. Mates. Known for years. I'm not kidding you. The celebration that night was fantastic. We had a lock-in at the Bransford when we went back. I could tell you a couple of stories, but I can't because lads would probably sue us. But what a fantastic night. That was my best memory as a player, and it was down to the fact that I'd done it with my mates. That was special. It was with me mates.
Exactly. And number two, as a player again, the best player that you've played against.
Oh, that one's easy, mate. Mickey Quinn. Jesus Christ. When I was at Crook, it was when Keegan took over at Newcastle. And his first season, he had a friendly at Crook, and he brought the full first team. You know at Crook where they have the old terracing behind the bottom goal. We're out all standing on the pitch before this game, and we know Newcastle's come, but we're expecting the kids. And we saw them coming over the top, and Keegan was the first one who come over, and then Terry Mack come over. And then like Mickey Quinn come over, Franz Carr came over, Kevin Scott, and it was like, shit, these are the first team. What's going on here? And Mickey Quinn, we were out warming up on the pitch, and I thought, he was heavy. He was heavy. They always used to say he was a big lad, and he was a big lad. But I wouldn't say he was fat, but he could have done with losing a couple of pounds. And I just thought, I'm going to intimidate him. I'm going to try and intimidate him. So I went over before the game when they were warming up, and I just went, can I just like introduce myself, shake your hand, because I'm long been an admirer of you. And I mean, I'm a Sunderland fan, me. It's I hate the black and white. I don't hate the black and whites, but I'd rather Sunderland would beat the black and whites. But and I'm saying, I'm a long time admirer of you, and he was, thank you very much. And I just went, by the way, every time you go near that fucking ball tonight, I'm going to kick your spine out. And he just ran off and giggled, and I just thought, right, okay then. So the game set away. I'm not kidding you, I never got within 10 yards of him. What a player. His first touch, left and right foot, fastest player I've ever seen over 10 or 15 yards. The ball was down, he's gone, it's in the back of the net before you know where you are. He scored 4 in the first half and didn't even come out for the second half. And I never got within 10 yards of him. And, you think you can play football till you see these lads. And it was similar. I didn't play against him, but Kevin Arnott was at Jarrow when I first went to Jarrow. And Kevin was probably into his late 30s at that point. But what a player. What a player. What these lads can do with a football is just it's crazy. Even at that age, he strolled through games. He'd drop it on a 10-pence piece, both feet, and just the way they played. It was, I learned a lot from them, to be honest. He again, another great player. But yeah, unfortunately, it was a black and white. It was Mickey Quinn.
Number 3, as a coach this time, your best memory as a coach?
It's got to be the Challenge Cup final.
Yeah.
Has to be. Reason for that is it was the culmination of 4 years of hard graft. And, you know, this is where a lot of coaches and managers can let themselves down. You've got to do your homework. You've got to go and watch teams. You've got to watch players. You know, I was out the house every night. And I'm ashamed to say it at times, but I've missed weddings. I've missed christenings. I've missed funerals. I've missed birthdays. I never went on holiday with the family for 9 years because I was doing football in pre-season. And, you know, out of all my football, that's a big thing I would change. I would never, ever do that again because I was just on the verge of being obsessive with football.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've dragged my wife, bless her, all over the country to watch teams. I took her down to Harrogate Railway once to watch them, to watch Scarborough Athletic. We were playing in the FA Cup. So she thought she was going to get a nice little tea and a scone in Betty's tea rooms, but she ended up at Harrogate Railway Athletic having a pie and chips and gravy. But I enjoyed it. And we beat them on the Saturday, so happy days. But it's got to be the Challenge Cup final. And the beat Spenny. That was special because it was Spenny as well.
Definitely. And as a coach, again, I know you're working on your best 11, but the best player overall that you've coached?
Oh, God, there's that many. To be honest, there's two, and I kind of put one above the other. Yeah. Obviously, Robbie Dale at Blythe was unbelievable. He was the one player that can change a game. You know, Robbie can pick the ball up on the edge of his own box, dribble past 10 players and put it straight in the top corner. I saw him do it a million times. You know, Robbie was temperamental low. If he didn't want to do it, you might as well be sat next to you in the dugout, because if he didn't want to do it, he wouldn't do it. But the amount of talent that Robbie had, and the thing is with Robbie, he always had the same trick. He'd drop that shoulder, but nobody could get the ball off him. He'd do it time and time, and nobody could get the ball off him. And Robbie was fantastic. He was proper talented player. The other one, Stephen Salvin, was just fantastic. I can't describe how good Stephen Salvin was. He could have played anywhere in the Northeast, and he stayed loyal to Bishop. People like, Stephen Salvin, he was the top earner at Bishop, and to be honest, it was derogatory what he was getting, or derisory, sorry. And I went to him 1 year because we'd actually had a budget cut because the club couldn't afford the budget that were on the season before, and it wasn't a great deal of money. So I actually went to Salah and said, "Look, Salah, will you take a pay cut so I can bring some better players in?" Without a hesitation, yeah, straight away. Now, there's not many people like that will do that, but people like Robbie Dale and Stephen Salvin, you didn't coach them people. You just give them a shirt. You give them a shirt and let them get on with it. You know, that people, when they're that good, don't need to be coached. You don't need to tell them what the job is. Stephen Salvin was my captain at Bishop, and he kept the changing room together as well. So for me, a captain's got a massive role. He's part of the management team as well, and he keeps the changing room in order so you don't have to go in there and get involved in it. So, you know, if I had to rank one above the other, I'd have to say Salah. I'd have to say Stephen Salvin. By a million times, I just kind of tell you how important he was to Bishop.
Excellent. And this one, I love this as what we always ask the manager, the best opposition player that you've seen, but you could just never sign. Who was that one player that always stood out? You've offered, but you've never ever gotten in. Who's that best being that one player?
It was difficult to sign players because we never paid the wages that the other teams were paying. So we couldn't compete with that. And unfortunately, cash was king with some people. But there was one lad in particular, and I tried to sign him a few times, and I couldn't get him, and it was Carl Beasley, who was Benny Moore and Towlaw. Carl was, I think he was underrated as a player. He was a very good player, but he'd run through a brick wall. He tackled dynamite, Carl, and he was a great lad. And I tried loads of times to sign Carl, but I could never get him because his loyalty was with Spennymoor. I think he was a Spennymoor lad, actually. So his loyalty was with Spennymoor. But yeah, I would have loved to have Carl Beasley in any of my teams. I thought he was a wonderful player.
And what would you say was the most bogey ground as a manager that you just couldn't pick up the win, or that last minute winner against you? What was that ground that you just could never get a point from?
Whitley Bay. Whitley Bay, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I can only ever remember winning one game at Whitley Bay. And that was with Jar Rufin, and we beat them 7-0. I think that was the only time we beat Whitley Bay. And Whitley Bay became a bit of a nemesis for me when I was at Bishop, because Bishop had been struggling for years, and they'd never beat a number of teams for so many years. So I kept setting the targets as sort of for, like, you know, they hadn't beat Bedlington for so long. Right, let's go and beat Bedlington.
Yeah.
Let's just kill that one there. And we were knocking them off left, right, and centre as we were going through. But Whitley Bay were the only team that we couldn't beat. And there was times where we had them on the rack. We should beat them. We didn't beat them. And that was eventually, I think we did eventually. We beat them in the League Cup quarter-final on penalties. But that was at our place. The year we got the Challenge Cup final, because we also got the League Cup semi-final that year as well. So without a shadow of a doubt, Whitley Bay, even playing, I can never remember winning at Whitley Bay. Never. I mean, great ground. I used to love going there, to be honest. Great ground, great people. You know, Derek Breakwell, God bless him. Again, fantastic people. But Whitley Bay were a team in there when they were winning the Vars 3 times a row. Chandler, great players. But no, Whitley Bay was awful place for me. Awful.
And finally, I can imagine there's loads, but what would be your funniest football moment that you've seen or been involved in?
Oh, Christ. It's thinking of one where the police aren't going to be knocking on my door in about 5 minutes' time. I've got a couple then. On the theme of Whitley Bay, I remember playing at Whitley Bay with Bishop one day, and we had a kid at Bishop, Joe Grant. I don't know if you ever come across Grant.
Yes.
Right now, Joe was just a little lad, and he was a young lad, but he was a good player, and he loved the tackle and all that carry on. But Joe was as numb as a boot. I don't think he'll be offended with me saying that. I still speak to him sometimes now. He was as numb as a boot, Joe. And Whitley Bay had Paul Robbo at the time in midfield, who used to just pull a fantastic player, absolutely brilliant player. And I said to Joe, Joe, I want you within 1 yard of him all game. You do not, from that whistle sounding to the whistle going at the end, you do not leave his side. So he tracked them all over, done a great job on Robbo, to the extent where Robbo was starting to get pissed off with him. Right? So half time come, and we're back in the changing room, and Joe sat there, and I went, "What are you doing in here?" And he looked at us, and I says, "Fucking get in there with Robbo. Go and sit next to Robbo." And Joe, being as numb as a boot, off down the corridor. So obviously we all listening at the door, and we can hear Joe knocking on the door. So I think it was the little Brian who used to be can't remember his second name now. It's lost us. He was assistant to Chan, and he was a tough nut and all, Brian. And he opened the door, and we could hear Granty saying that the gaffer says, "I've got to come down here and sit next to Robbo." And Brian was like, "Fuck off, you little shit." So we're all back in the changing room laughing our backs off. We're rolling around the changing room laughing at this, and Joe comes in, opens the door, and he went, "Gaffer, I can't. They've told us to fuck off." I says, "Joe, sit down, man, you bloody idiot." I mean that was one. And another one, Mickey Walker, kit man at Bishop. brilliant. Mickey Walker was all part of the crack. He was like he was our Darren Ross of Bishop. And Mickey used to fancy his cell, and he used to set his book up to the lads and that. And I mean, Salah was a big lad, and we were playing down at Bradford Park Avenue, and he was setting his book up to Salah. So Salah got hold of him. I mean, Salah was a big lad, folded him up like a piece of paper and zipped him up in the kit bag, and we all just went off. And he was left zipped up in the kit bag in the middle of the changing room. You know, one more. There was a lot of branding called Spook. Andy Purvis, centre forward, shaved head and everything. He was very intimidating on the pitch, but he was an absolute lovely lad off it. And we were playing at Pete Lee one day, and there was a kid on the sidelines on a pair of crutches, and he wasn't giving Spook the lickings of a dog, and he was onto a more game, and in the end, Spook pops up, scores the winner right at the end of the game. He does no more. He runs straight over to this kid, grabs his crutches, and just throws them straight over the fence. And so this kid's left standing there with no crutches, and it was just so funny. But I mean, there's a million stories. Probably I forgot half of them. But you know, the stuff I couldn't tell you on here.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Your side splitting, but great times.
Excellent. But no, Colin, honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and some of the cracking stories as well. Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
No problem at all. I've enjoyed it.
Excellent. But Lo's been watching throughout the night as well, so we really appreciate your support as well. A couple of comments coming in. It's an absolutely fantastic, great podcast. Like you say, it's always available now to watch back as well. If you are watching it back, I know we do get a lot of people who watch it the day after, going to the gym, out walking the dogs as well. So if you're watching back as well, thank you so much. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button as well. But for everyone who has been watching and watches till now, and Colin, I hope you enjoy the rest of your night as well.
I will do. I'll just say before you go, mate, if I haven't mentioned anybody, don't be offended. I'm getting loads of texts on my phone at the minute, probably off Peter Jeffries at this moment in time, but don't be offended. But I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much for having us.
Excellent.